Hello everyone, my name is Makari. I am here today to introduce to you Limbo, the dapper gentleman to my right here. Limbo. Oh boy, Limbo. I'm pretty sure everyone in the world can attest to not quite understanding Limbo when he first comes out. This is being recorded on one of my Twitch channels, on one of my Twitch streams, so if you want to drop by at some point and learn more about Warframe, then please drop by. There will be a link in the video down below. Now, Limbo. What is Limbo? Limbo, for the most part, is a control frame. Limbo is a frame that, for the most part, will control an area. Although he has DPS potential, he is mostly there to be a utility frame. And what we're going to look at today is, for the most part, his builds, his playstyles, and a sort of in-depth look as to where you'll use him. So to start with, let's have a quick look at his abilities, shall we? So we're going to summon some random dudes, and then we will go and see what his abilities do. Alright, so, Limbo's abilities. They were changed quite recently in a patch that updated his stasis and his cataclysm somewhat, but we're not going to go into the details of what he used to be, more so what he is now. So, Limbo's abilities, they are quite synergistic with each other. His 1, which is Banish, and his 3, which is Rift Surge, are quite synergistic with each other, and his 2, which is Stasis, and his 4, which is Cataclysm, are also very synergistic with each other. So we're going to break each of these abilities down into their synergies and how they work together. So Banish. Banish is an ability which will turn one or a bunch of enemies based on your range efficiency. It will then banish them. Now, one of the fundamental points about Limbo is that he has two different modes, non-Rift mode and Rift mode. Whilst Limbo is in the Rift mode, anyone that he has banished, or anyone in the Rift with him, is able to then take damage from him, and is able to shoot him. Anyone that is not in the Rift cannot take damage from him, and on that same note, cannot damage him. So this is a way that you are able to control the field. You can choose to take certain enemies from being in play to being out of play by banishing them to the Rift, thus removing them from your worry. Now, this works in conjuncture with Limbo's 3, which is his Rift Surge. So, if you there, get out of the Rift. So we're going to pop Rift, banish these guys, and we're going to put Rift Surge on them. Now, Rift Surge is a ability that spreads Banish. So this Rift Surge will be applied onto these dudes, and in a moment it will clip off of them and spread to nearby enemies. The length of this Rift Surge is based on your duration. The longer your duration, the longer it will be up. And if the enemy dies, then it will also spread that way as well. So if we kill this dude here. So you see it spread that guy behind now. So this sort of works with a pretty low duration build if you want it to spread more effectively, which is something that you do with a certain build we're going to talk about later. Rift Surge is probably the least used ability for the most part because it doesn't work too well with most of his builds other than the one we're going to mention later. So as you see, it pops off, it spreads to the others, and now the ones that weren't banished are now banished. So those are the two synergistic abilities for those two. The other synergistic abilities are his 2 and 4. So we're going to look at the 4 first, which is Cataclysm. We're going to go say hello to these dudes down here. Cataclysm is a ability that is range-based, which will summon a gigantic bubble. Anything within this bubble is then banished. So anything outside the bubble cannot shoot in, and anything inside the bubble can't affect things on the outside unless they are also banished. Now this works in conjunction with your 2. Anything that is affected by banish, when stasis is activated, thusly becomes stopped in time, essentially. So we're going to activate the AI on these dudes, and we're going to show you exactly what we mean. So the dudes in here are all affected by banish. We activate stasis, and now they are completely at my mercy. I can destroy them, I can kill them, I can leave them as they are, and they will then just fall down and die, hopefully. So as you can see, these guys have walked into the bubble, and now they are stasis as well. These guys outside are trying to shoot me, but they can't because they are not banished. They cannot shoot me because I'm in the rift, they are not. So with those abilities in mind, you can understand from a fundamental point of view, Limbo has unbelievable amounts of control. And with this, the builds that he goes by can dictate very heavily based on his playstyle. Now, something to keep in mind is that Limbo is has a reputation for being a bit of a bastard. Limbo has the ability of banishing his own teammates, which is also relevant to a build that I will explain later. Limbo when banishing allies, will banish his own team to the Rift. Now, you might be thinking, oh great, that's going to be annoying. And this is something that Limbo used to suffer a lot more from back before stasis also prevented any bullets from traveling. Because stasis will also affect the projectile being emanated from bullets. Fuke, thank you, follow. So, you've got to look at it, let's look at this in the perspective of somebody who you've just joined a random group with. You join a group with a random Limbo. This Limbo uses a gigantic cataclysm, like so, in order to lock down an area. The only trouble being now, the people outside your bubble need to come inside the bubble to be able to deal damage. So because of that, you are forcing your team to play in a style that they might not want to. So with that being said, you are going to have to be very considerate of your team, and this is why we're going to have a quick look at the build orientation towards Limbo. There is one major build that Limbo goes for the most part, and this is based around his Cataclysm. Because your Cataclysm is the dictation of your control. Anything within your Cataclysm is what you control. So, the go-to build that I personally go for, this is my build that has worked for me for all Limbo content when it comes to playing with people I know, and when it comes to farming group, holding down the location. This works on the longest length of Cataclysm possible, with the biggest Cataclysm possible. Now, something to bear in mind is how these stats affect his Cataclysm. Because the Cataclysm is the pinnacle function of Limbo. Duration affects the shrinkage of the bubble. Cataclysm will slowly get smaller as it's up. So the more duration you have, the slower it shrinks. The more range you have, the bigger its initial burst will be. So going for range and duration as your primary stats on this is the most optimal way of going about it. So this is the build that I go for when I'm playing with people I know who are going to be very okay with the fact they are fighting in a small enclosed area. If you're going into a team of people who do not know you or who do not understand how Limbo works, being considerate of these players is important because you don't want to annoy people. This build, it works on the same function, however it goes on a much smaller area. This makes it more convenient for your team, it has a lot of duration in it, and you could even replace some of it with power strength to make some of your other abilities more potent. Bearing in mind that power strength on Limbo is almost pointless for the most part. You can replace any of these power, you can replace Augur Secrets with anything you wish. It's just for me, this is how I personally use Limbo for bubbles. One of Limbo's augments, and we'll go into the augments in a bit more detail a bit later, is Cataclysmic Continuum. Cataclysmic Continuum increases the duration of your Cataclysm for each enemy you kill, which does obviously increase your potency when it comes to being able to keep your Cataclysm up. Now, just to have a bit of a breakdown here, the actual ability, all of these mods are pretty straightforward. You want range, energy, if you want to have more survivability, extra health is always a good thing. Then you want more range, duration, more duration. You want to try and max out your range at maybe 250. Anything beyond that, it's a little bit excessive, but you can go further should you wish. In fact, I even put Cunning Drift on this just for the sake of that little bit of extra range. And then from that point on, obviously because you're going to do a lot of casting, natural talent plays a very good role in making Limbo a lot more effective at casting. Now, the other build is based around his augment Rift Torrent. Now, as I mentioned at the start of this video, Limbo has the potential of doing damage. This is based off of the augment and his Rift Surge ability. Rift Torrent causes whenever an enemy is affected by Rift Surge, they will grant 30% bonus damage for each enemy affected by the Rift Surge. So, although you're never going to really see Limbo out-damaging most frames, this does give you the ability of having some solo play where you're able to deal more damage and to maybe push for something a little bit out of the norm. So just to give you a little bit of a preference, a little bit of an insight as to how this build works, we're going to do the exact same thing we just did. We're going to summon a bunch of dudes, and we're going to show you how this one works. So, as you can imagine, you want to get them into the Rift, you want to activate your 3 on them, and now that this is activated, every enemy affected gives me 30% damage bonus. So that's, as you can see at the top, 210% damage bonus that I'm now getting. So that in of itself is a rather hefty amount of damage bonus, which this can also then work in tandem with your Cataclysm. Anything then in your Rift can then be affected by your damage as well. So these are level 155s that are pretty much being shredded at this point. So this sort of slide leans us into the fact that Limbo can be very... Limbo gets a lot of preference to his playstyle and his build type from his augments. Now, there's only really two of his augments that I can truly suggest being important here. Cataclysmic Continuum, which is one we already looked at for his Rift, and the Rift Surge. But we are going to have a look at the other ones just for the sake of it. Just going to clear these guys out. So, looking at we've already looked at Cataclysmic Continuum, Rift Surge we looked at. There are there's one other augment which is quite interesting, which is Haven. Now, Haven, any ally you banish is then healed for 25% of their max health. Now, when it comes to this mod, I would not recommend it for the sheer fact that you are basically being a dick to your team, unless you plan on joining a team who know what you're doing and the fact that they are willing to then be banished. This is quite nice for the sake of just being able to heal, but it's incredibly annoying to have to deal with as a player who doesn't know you. Imagine wandering along and you're like, la 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 la, and then you get banished. You've been healed, but the trouble is now you can't attack anything unless you roll out of it, which is highly aggravating for players who don't know what they're doing, who don't understand what's happening. So with that being said, that is my basic rundown of Limbo, his abilities, how I play him, how I think is a good way of using him. If you have your own personal ways going around, let me know down in the comments. I would love to know your opinions. I'd love to know if you have your own builds. Like I said, these builds are my preference as to how I've learned to play them. And if you have better builds or builds you think would work nicely, I would love to give them a try. Leave a comment down below, send me an email, send me a Twitter mail, or come by the stream and show me your builds. I would love to see them. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you drop by the stream sometime. Leave a like, share, and subscribe on this video, and I will see all of you top hatters in the next video. Ta-ra.